When she said it, she didn't even look at me, just crossed her arms, her voice sharp and clipped, like a line drawn in the air. You're sleeping on the couch until you apologize. For something I didn't even do. There's a special kind of silence that follows a sentence like that. It's not just quiet, it's charged, heavy, like the air is waiting to see who breaks first. I stood there, one hand still holding the remote, mid-breath, mid-thought, and all I could manage to say was, okay, that one word. Calm, controlled, almost casual. But inside I felt something shift, something small but permanent, like the faint click of a lock turning shut. She didn't reply, just turned, walked upstairs and closed the bedroom door. The sound echoed through the hallway, bouncing off the walls of what used to be our home. Not hers, not mine. Hours that night, I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling fan, its slow rotation slicing through the darkness. Every turn sounded like a second passing, another moment of me being punished for something I didn't even do. And the thing is, I wasn't angry. Not at first. I was tired. Tired of defending myself against things I never said, never meant, never did. The fight had started over something trivial. A message on my phone from a coworker named Jenna. Thanks again for covering that meeting. That was it. No emojis, no tone, no hidden meaning. But to my wife, that single line became evidence. Evidence of something sinister. Something she decided must be true. I tried to explain, showed her the message, even handed her my phone. She refused to look. You always have an explanation, she said, like explanations were a crime. I remember the way her voice cracked. Not with anger, but fear. Fear of being made a fool. Fear of being lied to. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not that she accused me, but that she didn't even want to believe me. So I slept on the couch. One night became two. Two became four. By the end of the first week, I stopped counting. Something changed between us in those nights. She'd pass me in the hallway, eyes avoiding mine. We shared the same kitchen but different worlds. Mornings felt like business transactions. Coffee, toast, silence. No words, no warmth. Just the sound of the refrigerator hum filling the space where laughter used to be. The couch became my new normal. I folded my blanket every morning like a ritual. Neat, tight, controlled, I placed it on the armrest, almost proud of how well I adapted. Because the truth is, I wasn't going to apologize, not this time. I'd spent too many arguments giving in, just to keep the peace, too many nights saying, sorry, just to sleep in my own bed. But something in me had cracked, and that crack, it let the light in. By the second week, I started moving things into the guest room. At first, it was just my phone charger, then a few books, then a spare pillow. No big deal, I told myself. Just convenience. But convenience has a way of turning into comfort. I remember the moment it shifted. A Saturday morning. She came downstairs and paused when she saw me carrying my laptop into the guest room. What are you doing? She asked. I looked at her. Not angry, not defensive, just calm. Making space, I said. She frowned but didn't reply. That silence again. But this time it didn't crush me. It freed me. The guest room had always been dull. Pale gray walls, an old dresser. No personality. It felt like a waiting room for people who didn't belong. But the more I stayed there, the more I made it mine. I added a lamp, a small speaker, even a coffee mug that said, "Do not disturb." It started to feel like something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Funny, isn't it? You can live with someone, share a bed, share your life, and still feel more alone than when you're truly by yourself. She noticed the changes, of course. The faint smell of coffee from under the door in the morning, the sound of soft music, instrumental, nothing loud, the light slipping through the cracks at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. But she said nothing, and I matched her silence perfectly. The house became a museum of unspoken things. Every object, every picture frame, every note on the fridge carried history, but none of it alive anymore. By the third week, The couch felt like a past life. My temporary space had become a statement, and deep down I think she knew it, because she started watching me. Not directly, but from corners I'd catch her standing in the hallway, pretending to check her phone while her eyes flicked toward the guest room door. Maybe she thought I'd finally break, come crawling back, desperate to end the Cold War. But I didn't, because something unexpected had happened. That room had become my sanctuary, my small rebellion, my quiet answer to every unfair accusation I'd swallowed over the years. I found myself again there. I read books I'd forgotten I owned, played old records that once made me feel alive, cooked for myself, actual meals, not just reheated leftovers. I even started journaling, something I hadn't done since college. Not about her, about me. It was strange how clarity comes when noise fades. In that silence, I realized I'd spent years walking on eggshells, not because she was cruel, but because I was afraid of conflict. I thought love meant always giving in, always apologizing first. But love, real love, isn't afraid of truth. One night, as I sat on the floor beside the bed in the guest room, the moonlight cutting through the blinds, I thought back to the early days, before all the fights, before the bitterness. We were inseparable once, stayed up late planning our future. She'd curl up beside me, tracing lines on my arm, whispering, "Promise me we'll never stop talking." And I meant it. But somewhere along the way, the words ran out. Maybe we both stopped listening. Maybe we both got tired. But tonight, lying in the quiet hum of my makeshift bachelor pad, I finally understood. Sometimes silence isn't punishment. Sometimes it's protection. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. I leaned back, the lamp casting a soft glow on the wall. My coffee mug steamed beside me, the scent mixing with faint traces of her perfume still lingering in the hallway. 3 weeks had passed. 3 weeks of no apology. 3 weeks of rediscovering who I was before every argument became a negotiation. Then that night, I heard it. The slow creak of the hallway floor. Bare feet, hesitant, a faint knock. Not on the door, just near it, like she couldn't decide if she wanted to enter or retreat. I didn't move, didn't speak. The doorknob turned slightly, then stopped. She stood there in the dim light from the hall, her shadow falling across my desk. Her voice was quiet, fragile. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer right away, because for the first time in a long time, I had the choice. She stood there, hands still on the door handle, like the weight of 3 weeks of silence was pressing against her chest. The light from the hallway framed her face, half shadow, half memory. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I nodded once. "Yeah, come in." The door creaked as she stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room. The books stacked neatly on the nightstand, the small speaker humming low jazz, the folded clothes on the dresser, the faint smell of cedar from a candle burning low in the corner. It didn't look like a guest room anymore. It looked lived in. It looked like me. She hesitated by the doorway, her eyes tracing the room's transformation. The framed photo of my dad on the desk, the notepad filled with scribbles, the half-finished cup of coffee beside the bed. There was a softness in her expression, but also confusion, like she was seeing me for the first time in years. "This looks different," she said quietly. I gave a small, careful smile. "Yeah, I made it comfortable." Her gaze flicked to the armchair in the corner, the one I dragged in from the living room, the same one I used to sit in when we watched movies together. Now it was my reading chair. She noticed the blanket draped over it, her favorite one, the one she used to wrap herself in on cold nights. "Is that my blanket?" she asked. I looked at it. "Guess it is." Her lips pressed together like she was holding back words that didn't fit anymore. For a moment, the silence between us wasn't cold. It was heavy with the ghosts of everything unsaid. She finally sat on the edge of the bed, fingers tracing the seams of the comforter. "I didn't realize you'd been making this your space." I shrugged slightly. "I didn't plan it. Just happened." She nodded slowly. "You've always been good at adapting." I watched her eyes as she said it, tired, searching, regretful. Then she looked at me and said softly, "You never apologized." There it was, the same sentence that started everything. But it didn't sting this time. It just landed differently. I met her gaze and said, steady, calm, because I didn't do anything wrong. She blinked as if the simplicity of that truth startled her. I didn't text her anything inappropriate. I continued. Didn't lie to you, didn't hide a thing. But you decided I was guilty anyway. Her eyes flickered away, down to her hands. I know, she whispered. I took a breath, deep, steady. You told me to sleep on the couch until I apologized. So I slept on the couch. Then I made this room my own because I realized something in all that silence. I've spent years apologizing for things I didn't do, just to keep peace that never really existed. She looked up at me, her eyes wet now. That's not fair, she said. I know, I replied. Well, it's not, but it's true. She stood up, pacing slowly, like she couldn't find her footing on familiar ground. I was angry, she said quietly. I felt like you were pulling away from me. I thought if I pushed, you'd come closer. I exhaled, long and low. You pushed, all right, just not in the direction you meant. She stopped near the window, hand resting on the curtain edge. The faint streetlight outside painted her silhouette in golden shadow. When she spoke again, her voice trembled. I didn't think you'd actually stay away this long. I smiled sadly. That's the thing about distance. Once you get used to breathing on your own, you start realizing how long you've been holding your breath. She turned, eyes glistening. I don't want this to be the end. I looked around the room, the quiet sanctuary I'd built from punishment, the small space that had somehow become freedom. I don't either, I said softly, but it can't go back to what it was. Not after this. Her lip quivered. So, what are you saying? I paused, choosing my words carefully. Not to hurt, but to be honest. I'm saying I need something different now. I need honesty. I need trust. And I need to stop living like peace is something I have to earn by surrendering who I am. She came closer, her eyes never leaving mine. And what if I can give you that? I smiled faintly. Then we start over, not as who we were, but as who we are now. Her breath hitched. And if I can't? I took a step back, looking toward the lamp's soft glow against the wall. Then I'll be okay. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The ticking clock on the dresser, the faint hum of the street outside, everything stilled. She sat back down on the bed, tears slipping down her cheeks. I thought I was teaching you a lesson, she said, her voice breaking. But I guess I was the one who needed to learn something. I nodded. So did I. The silence that followed wasn't bitter this time. It was clean. Like both of us were finally breathing in air that hadn't been recycled through years of arguments. After a while, she looked around again, eyes lingering on the details. The candle, the music, the quiet strength of the room. You've made this place feel peaceful, she whispered. I smiled. That's because it is. She stood, wiping her eyes. Can I stay for a bit? I looked at the bed, then at her. Yeah, you can. She sat beside me, not too close, just enough for the warmth between us to feel real again. We didn't speak, didn't need to. For the first time in weeks, we just sat there, breathing. After a long while, she said quietly, I miss this. I turned slightly toward her. You mean the quiet? She smiled through her tears. No, you. That hit somewhere deep. Not because it fixed anything, but because it reminded me of the person I once loved before all the noise. I didn't know what would happen next. Maybe we'd talk, maybe we'd rebuild, maybe we wouldn't. But at that moment, it didn't matter, because I'd found something that mattered more than being right or being forgiven. I'd found myself again, and sometimes that's the only apology life ever really needs. She leaned her head lightly against my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, the silence between us didn't feel like distance. It felt like understanding. The clock ticked softly in the corner. The candle's flame flickered. Outside, dawn was beginning to rise, faint gold stretching across the sky. I knew we weren't the same people who started this fight, and maybe that was the point. Sometimes love doesn't need to go back to what it was. Sometimes it just needs to grow up. I reached over, turned off the lamp and whispered, "Welcome back." She smiled faintly in the dark, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt home.